Are you frustrated with the state of the healthcare system? That your doctor doesn't have enough time to spend with you because they're just not allowed? Are you frustrated that you're not getting the answers that you want? Being told maybe that you just need to be put on a medication and you know that's not the problem, or that you're just getting older, you're gonna have to learn to live with it, or that it's your genetics. I am here to tell you that if you are frustrated with your health right now and you don't know what to do, you have control over getting healthy again. All you need is a little education and a system. So I'm including a webinar that I recorded a few weeks ago after this video. And what I will teach you is how the food industry is manipulating all of us into becoming unhealthy in the way that we are today, and why willpower and changing your diet don't work. And lastly, how you can take some steps in order to start taking control of your health. I will see you at the end. And if you're interested, I am going to be offering a program called Metabolic Mastery. It starts in just a few days on April 15th, and I have extended the early bird pricing up until the class starts. The class is experiential and will help you go from the place you are at your health now into a completely different, transformed place where you will have the energy that you want. Your pain will either be decreased or eliminated. Your sleep will be better. Your thinking will be clearer, and you will be able to lose the weight. And we will unlock the confusion of how you actually lose weight easily and safely. And so you'll be able to lose weight that you haven't been able to lose in the past. So I will see you at the end of the webinar for more details. So before we get started, I wanted to tell you a little story about myself. So when I was in grade 8, my grade 8 graduation, there was a story that was told by my guidance counselor. It was a very long story, and at the end of the story, it turned out the person he was talking about was me. And I was very confused, and I knew that a lot of it was not true. And it was really, really kind of upsetting. And this was in front of like hundreds of people at the graduation. And so I never connected these two things until recently, but I think this is maybe why I did what I did next. So in grade 9, and I say grade 9 because I grew up in Canada, I started in September when I went back to school, buying a chocolate bar every single day for lunch. I would go to the 7-Eleven across the street from my high school and eat a chocolate bar. And then by Christmas, I had gained 40 pounds. And actually, I guess I missed part of this. So what I think bothered me so much was that I got a lot of attention when I was growing up. I was 135 pounds and 5'8", and got a lot of attention from boys and then for athletics. So this story that the guidance counselor told was just another thing that true really bothered me. So I think maybe what I was doing by eating all those chocolate bars is kind of trying to hide a little bit. And that gaining 40 pounds, my family was like, what happened to you? And so that was the major, I think, time where I've ever gained a lot of weight. But for the most part, weight is not something I struggle with, or had not struggled with. And then fast forward a few years, I was in college and I had a lot of stomach issues. And I ended up getting taken to a naturopathic doctor, and the naturopathic doctor had me change my diet and take some supplements, and my whole world changed. And that was really when I got rid of the junk food and the processed foods mostly. So I have been eating that way, like more of a whole foods diet ever since. And then fast forward to about 5 years ago, when I started doing weight loss programs for people, I can tell you, having someone who's never obsessed about food start obsessing about food for everybody else and weighing them and measuring them and all of that kind of stuff is not a good idea. Because it started this obsession for my own body, wanting, I always do all the programs that I put my people through first. So I went through a program. I got thinner than I already was. And then I was weighing myself every day and thinking about food and all of this stuff. And so what it kind of started was this, I think, more emotional eating and just obsession about my weight all the time. And I knew it was unhealthy and it didn't feel good. And what happens with everybody who loses weight, typically they're going to gain weight back eventually, because eventually you get willpower fatigue, which we're going to talk about more later. And willpower, I couldn't do it anymore. It didn't feel like willpower in the beginning, but it did feel like willpower later on after I gained weight. And actually this was right before the pandemic started. So the pandemic started, I started gaining weight, and I went through the program again, lost weight. And then I think just the stress of the whole pandemic and the stresses of life, I started wanting to eat the things that I was now letting in my house that I hadn't before, like sourdough bread all the time, and maybe letting my kids make cookies all the time, buying them ice cream, which actually I never really ate, but I was now eating things that I really hadn't eaten in 25 years. And I started packing on the weight. And I would think probably most people to look at me didn't think it was an issue, but for me, it was uncomfortable and it wasn't the way it felt before. And so I ended up weighing more than I've ever weighed in my adult life, not being pregnant, and was really, kind of disgusted with myself and didn't feel good. And so the thing that I always have wanted to be able to do with my patients that I never have is to figure out how to untangle the emotional eating for them. And I finally was able to find a way to figure it out. And that is why we are talking about what we are talking about tonight. So that whole thing has shifted for me, and I feel very excited to share it with you guys. So now, even though I've already talked about myself, I'm just going to explain a little bit about I'll just introduce myself. I know you guys all know me, but just for some of you who don't know everything that I think is relevant. So I'm a naturopath doctor. My name is Samia McCulley. This is also being recorded, so this is going to be for other people too. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and if you are not familiar with what a naturopath does, we are searching for the cause of a problem rather than trying to treat symptoms. So we go to medical school, naturopathic medical school, for 4 years, just like a medical doctor. And our focus is more, we learn all the same things, the same sciences, we learn about pharmacology, but our specialization is focused on botanical medicine and homeopathy, physical medicine, counseling, and nutrition. In the nutrition portion, we take several years of nutrition, and in traditional medical school, they get closer to zero. And I think most medical schools still don't get any nutrition education. So there's a huge difference, especially when I think most of us know by now that our food does have something to do with the way we feel. That's pretty important. And the other thing that's different is we are just trained to think differently. Like in our science classes, we're trained to think about systems. So how do the lungs interact with the rest of the body? And how does the vascular system interact with the rest of the body? And how is your knee related to your brain? And in conventional medicine, your knee is an isolated object that they look at, and they don't really look beyond the knee or the brain. It's completely separate. So it's just a really different way of looking at things. And what I've been doing for the last 20 years, I've been in practice for 20 years, is I treat things that people think are unfixable. So for example, I have a lot of patients who come from Kaiser or Stanford, and they've been told by their doctors that they can't help them, that they're just going to have to learn to live with whatever they've got going on. And my job is to fix that. And that's typically what happens. I have people who have had 5, 6, 7, even 8, 9 doctors, and they all get the same story, that they can't be helped, and they're just going to have to deal with it. So that's been my job for the last 20 years. So on to more interesting things. So what I would like to start this with, I talked about, if you saw any of the videos I had sent out, I had talked about willpower and calorie restriction as something that we should be able to give up, because it's not something that it doesn't work, A, and B, it's not actually something humans were designed to need to have to do. And I want to first mention, and I think most of us know this, there is a mental health crisis in our country, depression being the biggest issue. I think anxiety is a very close second. Depression is known now to be caused by inflammation of the brain. But where does the inflammation come from? The inflammation is coming from some connected place in our body that medical, traditional, conventional medicine doesn't like to talk about, or they don't talk about it. So in conventional medicine, it's pretty interesting that we separate psychology and psychiatry as a completely different study than the rest of the body. It's like as if the brain is not connected, and it's totally connected. I mean, in fact, we know that Alzheimer's is called type 1 or type 3 diabetes. I heard that term in 2010. Actually, maybe it was even 2006. It's been a long time for people to actually hear that. Locking us into a stuck state of health and weight. This has to do with our brain. How are these related to weight and health? Anxiety, depression, prolonged sadness, anger, rage, stress. I can tell you how each one of these are related to our brain. Anxiety, if you look up in Wikipedia what a panic attack is, you look up you see all the symptoms. And then you look up hypoglycemia and you see all the symptoms. They're all the same. So anxiety and hypoglycemia and panic attacks are kind of all the same thing. It's just on the spectrum. Anxiety is on the spectrum of that. So we know that when we get low blood sugar, anxiety appears. We know that when we have depression, it's because we have an inflamed brain. And how is serotonin, which is the neurotransmitter that's known to be connected or known to cause causes depression, 80% of that is made in our gut. So it's definitely not only to do with our brain. What's the biggest thing that enters our gut? It's our food. So depression and food go hand in hand. Yeah, that's not something that's talked about. And psychiatrists don't use food to remedy depression. They're using drugs. And talk therapy is not the only thing that remedies depression. In fact, I think that if we were to fix the food issue, we wouldn't need so much talk therapy. Prolonged sadness is just another piece of the spectrum of depression. And then there's anger and rage. And I would say you could put that on the spectrum of anxiety. I could give you a little story. When I was practicing over a few blocks away from my office right now, there was a little girl. I was in an old Victorian building, and the building had a hallway. And so there were 25 other psychologists in this building. And I I used to see this woman sitting in the hallway, and when she was done, I would see her little girl come out. And eventually, so I would see her week after week. And eventually, the mother made an appointment with me to bring her daughter to see me. And so what I found out was that she was having rage issues. She was like uncontrollable, temper tantrums, and she was like 10 or 11 years old. It was like it wasn't a developmental thing. She was too old for this to be happening. And what I told her very quickly was that this was a blood sugar thing, and she needed to change what she was eating, when she was eating. And what ended up happening is the mother, I think, thought it was too challenging to change her diet. So she ended up stopping seeing me, and just how it ended, but and then we have stress. Stress is aggravated by blood sugar, by low blood sugar. Stress increases, when we have an increase in stress, we have an increase in blood sugar, and then that also impacts our health. And so we want to make sure that we understand that our brain and our body is connected, and food is the solution. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna have to change the format of this. Okay, so when we feel yucky, we depressed, angry, sad, stressed, we tend to eat something that spikes our blood sugar, and then we feel worse. And then we eat something again to make us feel better, to get a dopamine hit, and then we feel worse. And the cycle goes round and round and round. The problem is that when we eat sugar, if it's sugar that we're eating, or even carbs like potato chips or other things like that, when we eat sugar, it's actually a evolutionary response for us to want more sugar. And I'll tell you why that is later. But so the more sugar we eat, the more sugar we want. And it's actually a totally normal response, which is something that you need to understand. And it's really important, if you understand that, then you can actually begin to change the way things are happening. So the way to intervene here is to add healthy fats, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proper hydration, and healthy eating. And what happens when we don't have those things? We have deficiencies, and those deficiencies are what are causing the issues in the first place. When we have all those things, we feel happier. When we have all those things, all the things in our bodies work properly. And so if we can change our nutrition, we can change the way we feel emotionally, and all of that willpower that we need to not want something. So when we're looking at anxiety, depression, prolonged sadness, anger, rage, and stress, we need to pull ourselves out of the bucket, and we need to treat the things that we need, or we need to use the food to get us out of it and shift our health away so that we can feel good again. Oh, there's a question here. So we evolved as humans with food as a rarity, something I don't think people really think about. And our hardware, meaning our genetics, instructs us not to starve. most of us are doing a really, really good job of not starving. And the reason for that is because we live in a world where we have an abundant supply of food 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can go at 3 o'clock in the morning to Safeway and buy anything we want. We can go touch a box with our hand and food will appear at our door in half an hour. Never before in history has something like that happened. So evolutionarily, we have not, our genetics have not evolved to the point where this needs to be possible, or when it is possible, it causes great destruction. So let me explain. If you were a hunter-gatherer, the calories that would be available to you would be very few. You would have to go looking for food, hunting for food. And the reason you wouldn't stay in one place or live in one place is because you need to be able to find new food. If you eat something off of a tree, the tree's not going to grow back fruit in a few minutes. The tree is going to take a while, maybe another year to grow back the fruit. So you've got to roam around and you've got to move a lot. You've got to walk a lot. Probably they were getting at least 20,000 steps a day. And then next we have the pastoralist. The pastoralist is like the Maasai, who have animals and they have to roam around to keep their animals fed, and they are feeding off of their animals. And so their calories per acre is larger because they have all these animals around them and they do have food, but they do have to roam around to keep the animals fed. And then we have agriculturalists. Agriculturalists plant seeds, they sow the seeds, and then the seeds grow, and then they wait. And so they don't really have to go very far, but they do have to do a lot of work initially to plant all the seeds and to keep the garden or the field healthy. And so then we have, so that is a very high calorie per acre. It's pretty almost unlimited, I would say, unless there's a drought or something bad happens. And then there's us, where we have a gazillion calories at our fingertips all the time. And so the pastoralist, the agriculturalist, and us have all been in the last 10 to 15,000 years. And as human beings, we've been around as Homo sapiens, we've been around for 250,000 years about. And before that, we were similar for 5 or 6 million years. We have been evolving for a very, very long time, but we have only been evolving with the need to be able to consume processed food for just a few hundred years. And even the foods that people were eating 10,000 years ago is just a tiny, tiny blip in the history of mankind and our ancestors, so that we really haven't evolved to be able to handle these things. I'm going to give you an example. So take a look at this. This is kind of disturbing, actually, but I think you get the point. So we have been consuming another mammal's milk for a very long time. I would say, I don't know if we've been consuming cow milk for 10,000 years, but I think we've been consuming sheep and goat milk. And if you think about it, like a cow, which is what we predominantly use now, cows were designed so that we could, cow's milk is designed for a baby calf. A baby calf grows to 100 pounds in the first year of life. So that milk is definitely not designed for us to consume. And in fact, the strangest thing is if you heard of an ice cream store that served breast milk ice cream, I think you'd probably be grossed out. Yet we think that it's normal to drink a cow. We associate ourselves with this cow more than we do with actually the human that we were meant to. But the thing is, we're not meant to drink human milk past weaning, but we do. We don't drink human milk. We drink other mammals' milk, and it just wasn't designed for us. Think about it, that in the 10,000 years, there's a very small percentage of the population that will be able to handle lactose. And lactose is a sugar that we can handle when we're babies, but we lose the ability to handle it later. At least most of us have. And so I know I didn't even realize this until much later, but I used to have horrible stomach aches every morning. And I know now that it was because I couldn't handle lactose. So milk is not designed for us. And some people have lost the ability to feel bad while drinking milk, yet they're still impacted by it and they can't feel it, which is unfortunate. So what do? We just take the lactose out of milk and drink it anyway. One thing that I think everyone should know is that we as a country have one of the highest osteoporosis rates in the world, along with England and Finland. And the three countries that consume the most milk or dairy products are the United States, England, and Finland. And so we know that that's not really working for us. I actually had a patient once. He was about 8 years old, and his mother brought him in because he was projectile vomiting every time he drank milk. And so I did a food sensitivity test on him at the time. But I also suggested to his mother that if he was vomiting every time he had milk, that maybe he should not be drinking milk. So finally she agreed and they stopped, but she was really desperate. I mean, the dairy industry has done a really good job at marketing that milk is a necessary thing. And if you remember in the 80s, I don't even know when it changed, maybe the 90s, it used to say milk does you know that if you were to, well, maybe you don't, but if you were to take a piece of this off, you cannot chew this and eat it. You can't digest it. It's covered, the covering of it is indigestible. And then there's the wheat gluten inside, and there's other proteins inside. And now we have all this gluten sensitivity. Well, this wheat stock is really meant for birds. And the only way for us to have been able to eat it is if we crush it up and make it into a powder. And that, is we humans have had a love affair with dairy and wheat for a very long time. But the problem is that when you introduce food in a different form, it opens humans up to have to metabolize things that we were never meant and never evolved to metabolize. So now we have all these gluten-free things that have about 5 million things on the list, which I don't think we're meant to metabolize either. It's more like cardboard. Anyway, something I wanted to tell you about, if you've never heard of Weston Price. Weston Price was a dentist in the 1930s, and he traveled around the world visiting indigenous and primitive, that was his word. It was a long time ago, for tribes and populations. And what he found when people were eating their natural diet was that they had wide faces, a broad nose for lots of oxygen, and their teeth were straight, and they had room for all their teeth, which many people do not nowadays. And their jaws, everything was healthy about it. Their palate was wide, and they never got any cavities, or I don't think, if they did, it was very rare. So you can see these people here in the picture. And then these are just other people that are eating their natural diet. And now we have these people who quickly switched, and what was introduced was a Western diet. I don't know how, what portion of their food became processed, but I mean, I do know that the Aborigines have a horrible heart disease and diabetes. I still call them Eskimos here, but Inuit also have horrible heart disease and diabetes. And when they were eating blubber whale or blubber fat, whale blubber, they didn't have anything. The fat, their bodies could handle that fat. And I just took a close-up of this kid right here and look at his teeth. These are his adult teeth growing in. They're all crooked and out of place. And so what Weston Price discovered was that when people moved to a diet that was super unhealthy, their development changed. And it changed from sibling to sibling. You could see when the parents started to eat this processed food, the older kid to the younger kid, their development changed. Their faces narrowed, their teeth got crooked, they started getting cavities, their noses were crooked, and their palates were narrower. And birth defects, and it was all so apparently nutrition. So we have lost sight of what it is to eat naturally for ourselves. Like we think bread is natural. I don't know, maybe not everybody does, but I think most people think it's natural. We have our evolution has not caught up to our diets. And the way for us to remove the need for willpower is to go back to the way we were eating before. If you think about this, and I don't mean literally, but there's a stage-wise process that can get you to the foods that we were actually meant to eat, the foods that actually nourish our bodies, and the foods that actually make us healthy. When we were cavemen, when we were hunter-gatherers, did not need willpower. All they needed was a will to survive, and they needed to go find food. They needed to hunt for food. If they came across a peach tree that had a bunch of peaches, I don't think one guy is going to say that he's being rude by eating so much of the peaches, and that he should stop and let someone else eat them. He's going to eat as many as he can, or even if there's an abundance, there's too much, he's not going to stop thinking that he's eaten too much. He'll eat whatever he can. And because our drive is to actually eat more sugar, and when we're exposed to sugar, being that when sugar is available to us, it's an indication the season is coming soon, that there will be a lot less food. So when there's sugar available, it is a natural drive for us to want to eat more sugar, because it allows our bodies to store fat in order to have energy for later on. So because of the way food is now, we think that we're bad when we don't have enough willpower to not eat something, but we weren't designed for it. And the food industry knows this. They know that we're driven by sugar. They know that we'll want to keep eating sugar. Of agriculture has also caused the need for willpower, because if you grind up wheat, it's a lot of carbohydrates, which is essentially sugar. So it's going to make us want to eat and eat and eat. And so we also are filled by these empty calories that don't nourish us, and our body's still starving. So we never stop. We never want to eating. So when we shift things and we start craving things that are actually nourishing us, all of that can change. So, two takeaways I want to give you to help remove the willpower is to decrease your stress, because when stress is rampant, which I think it kind of is everywhere for everybody most of the time, stress is something that increases our blood sugar. And when our blood sugar is increased by stress, it makes us want more sugar. So when we say we're, stress eaters, it's actually an evolutionary response. The sugar that's going up in our bloodstream, and it's pulled from our liver, our muscles. We have it in our body stored as glycogen. So when it's released and our blood sugar goes up, it makes us want more sugar. So it makes us want to eat more. So one of the ways to decrease stress, I mean, I think we all know this, but I don't think people really understand the importance of keeping stress lower in our lives. I think meditation is a huge benefit. And if you don't know how to meditate, you can use guided meditations online. YouTube has a ton of them. You can use different apps like Calm, and there are other things that I use at my office. So that's one thing. And then keeping your blood sugar balanced. One of the general rules I ask people to do when they start to see me, before we develop metabolic flexibility, which is the ability for your body to dip into fat or sugar at any given time, which is the way for you to be able to maintain weight easily and also have, it makes you want healthier things. And so a lot of other things fall into place, like your sleep and your pain can go away, and all kinds of other, energy, better energy. So I ask people to eat every 4 hours, or an easier way of saying this actually is to just don't let yourself get hungry. If you don't let yourself get hungry by choosing certain foods, then if you're choosing the right foods, even if you're choosing the wrong foods, I found out one time, I had a diabetic patient who I don't think he was on insulin yet, but he was pretty heavy. And I asked him to eat every 2.5 to 3 hours. Basically, he wasn't allowed to get hungry. And he came back, he came back every month, but like after about 3 or 4 months, he'd lost 35 pounds. And he said, I can't believe it. All I'm doing is I'm doing what you told me. I'm just eating and eating and eating. And he said, I'm even eating things I shouldn't be eating, like cereal and milk before bed. But he said, my blood sugar is so much lower when I do that. So the more even he kept his blood sugar, the more weight his body was able to release. And it wasn't a struggle, and he wasn't starving himself. So those are the two takeaways. If you guys actually, I'm going to just do, if you're interested in doing something more, if you really want to experience this for yourself, to be able to remove the need for willpower from your life, and to really shift your health. I mean, losing weight is great, but having energy, the most important thing for me always has been energy. Having energy to do all the things you want to do, having it cleaned, sleep properly, and restfully, having no pain, all of these things come what it needs. And so I wanted to give you a little peek into what it is that you have available to you in this webinar. And also to know that I have a course or a program starting next week on Monday. It's a 12-week experiential program, and I will take you through stepwise process of changes with your diet. We will be working on your psychology for the first 2 weeks. You'll learn about the 6 human hungers, And you'll learn about how to break those down so that you can start using them to get that negative voice in your head that's telling you to go for the chocolate bar or the ice cream or whatever it is to make you feel good, and will help you to get your, wanting the things that actually will make you feel good, and to get rid of the bad feelings and give you the energy that you need. So in this program, there are there's a live call with me where I'll answer questions, and some of it will be teaching, and a big part of this is education, because when you're open, when you realize what you know what you don't know, lots of things can change. But if you're kind of in the dark about what's going on, and why you can't lose weight, or why you don't have energy, or why you're feeling bad, you can't do anything about it. You'll receive handouts every week that will give the specific changes that will happen. I don't reveal the syllabus ahead of time because the whole psychology of it doesn't work if you get that. And then there is a Facebook group that will be there to support, where people can share recipes, post and view recipes, get questions answered, and you'll have a community around you of other people who are doing the same thing. And so if this is something that you'd be interested in, hi, I'm back. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, I just wanted to give you the details here. What I'm offering is a program where we will take you through 12-week incremental changes. You will learn a lot about yourself, about the food industry, our genetics, everything that has culminated in the state of health and the way that we are today, and help you bring you to the place you want to be. So I have a link which you can't click on in this video, but it will be listed below in the YouTube, on YouTube, when I post it. The early bird special is good until Sunday or Monday, even Monday afternoon before the class starts. And we have a 3-pay that is also available if that works better for you. But the link will be below, so just click on the link, use the codes, they will work. If you have any questions about this program, you can email info@wellnessarchitecture.com, or you can call our office at 650-233-7327 if you have any questions or concerns before signing up. But I guarantee you, I have done this myself, and the changes that I have experienced, I can feel the difference. The story I told at the beginning, where I just wasn't able to get rid of food that I'd been eating after COVID, and it's completely changed for me. I've lost 13 pounds now, and I know that I feel much more empowered to be able to turn on and off the states of my body that need to be in place in order to lose weight. Also, to have energy that just goes and goes and goes. Of course, you need to be able to sleep. But my energy is consistent all day long now. I am sleeping better. I don't remember if I said this in the webinar, but I was having a lot of leg pain, that would move around. It would wake me up at night. That pain is gone. And I just feel so much happier that I'm happy with my body again. And I would love to have all of those things happen for you too. Oh, I will also say that I can see myself getting things done more efficiently now, because I know, because my blood sugar is more stable, I'm able to concentrate and focus better. So anyway, hope to see you on Monday night. Again, if you have any questions, you can call our office, 650-233-7327, or you can email us at info@wellnessarchitecture.com.